Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 26th of December. Today we have some interesting updates to discuss, so let's start. First we're going to start with the territory of Russian Federation. This is one of the most important airport on the Russian Federation. It's like Engels Airport, and the Russians keep their nuclear aircrafts, the aircrafts that are able to carry nuclear weapon. Furthermore, but if we're talking about special operation, this is the airport where the Russians keep their air forces that strikes and attack Ukraine using Caliber and many other missiles. If you remember, a few weeks ago, the Ukrainians made the same attempt. They sent drones, and the previous attempt was pretty successful. As a result of previous attack, the Russians lost a few aircrafts and a few soldiers were killed during that operation. If we're talking about today, the Ukrainians the Russians managed to shut down the drone, but the Russians are saying the parts of this drone fell on the ground and two soldiers were killed as a result of this explosion of the drone in the sky. The Russians' air carriers didn't get any damage, and this is very important because the Russians used this airport to attack Ukraine with a Caliber and many other rockets. And the previous time, the Ukrainians made the same attempt right before the day the Russians started their attack in Ukraine, the previous massive attack with the rockets. So I believe that the Ukrainians have some kind of data, intelligence data. According to this data, they understand that the Russians are plans or are preparing for another attack right before the new year or something like this. And of course, the best solution for the Ukrainians to allow the Russians to accumulate rockets, missiles on the airport, to accumulate aircrafts and so on, and to send the drones. And of course, the main goal is to attack and destroy the shells and to force these shells, these rockets to detonate. And of course, with this, they are able to get as much as possible success and effect from this attack. So I believe that maybe tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, we are going to see another massive attack of the territory of Ukraine right before New Year, because at least this Ukraine attempt might explain this situation. If we're talking about Bryansk region, today the FSB, the Russian Special Forces, Special Police, published a video and photos of the situation on the ground on the Bryansk border, and the Russians managed to destroy one commandos. 4 Ukrainians were sent in direction of Bryansk. I believe that their main goal was to mine the territory, maybe to destroy some fuels depot, maybe to destroy the railroad or something like this. But some sources are saying that these guys got on the minefield, and at least 2 of them were killed as a result of mine detonation, and another 2 maybe was killed as a result of clashes and ammo shootings or weapon shootings or something like this. Now let's talk about situation on the ground. And today we have some interesting updates to discuss. If we are talking about Kupiansk-Liman front line, there are not much changes and there are not much losses from the Ukrainian side. The Russians reported that as a result of the clashes for the previous 24 hours, the Ukraine lost just 50 soldiers on the area from Kupiansk to Liman. So as you can see, it's not much, and around 7 armored vehicles. Furthermore, the Russians reported about destroying 1 commandos in the forest right in front of Kreminna. The Ukrainians still tries to attack and to get as close as possible to this town, but for now all their attempts were repulsed by the Russians. The most important update, I believe, from this front line is that the Russians managed to destroy the Ukrainian howitzer D-30. It's of course, it's always a very nice update for both sides if they are able to destroy enemy artillery. And we know that Ukrainians have problem with artillery systems, with ammo shells. We know about the ratio, and of course, if the Ukrainian loses artillery system, it's also very bad update. And today the Russians reported that as a result of artillery duels, the Ukrainian lost 1 artillery system in the town by the name of Trskoye, 1 howitzer system. Now we are moving to the Bakhmut, and today we got from Bakhmut at least 2 very interesting updates. The first one is that the Russians managed to penetrate the Ukrainians' defense order in Bakhmutskaya. This is a small village that located on the south from Solidar. If we take a look at the Western sources map, you will understand the real border of this town. So This is the border of this town, but small. It's not a town, it's a small village with a few streets or something like this. And according to the Russian sources, finally they managed to cross the road rocket, this one, T1302, this one, and they managed to establish control over central part, to be more precise, over the school in the central part of this village. And this is the most important building, most important facility in this area. I'm talking about this school. This is the only high building. There are just the local villages, small buildings, and so on. The only thing that the Russians need to pass is farms on the west, this small industrial zone. I believe that Ukrainians have already prepared this area. It will take weeks before the Russians, or maybe a week, or maybe days before the Russians are able to take. But anyway, the most important, as I told you, the Russians crossed this rocket, and now they have a safe and secure road to this part of Bakhmutskaya. And to tell the truth, Bakhmutskaya, by taking off the middle part and by taking the road rocket, have already fallen. So it's just a question of time when the Ukrainians will be forced to step back. Very interesting updates are coming from the middle part of Bakhmut, from Bakhmut itself. Today in the morning we got an update from the Wagners on the ground. They reported that during the previous hours or maybe days, they managed to repulse Ukrainian attack in direction of Zaitsevo. And this is very important because the Ukrainians sent some kind of commandos in this direction, and the Russians reported that the number of soldiers in that commandos was around 50 soldiers. The Russians spotted these commandos and destroyed these commandos by artillery fire, and a lot of Ukrainians were killed and many were forced to step back, and they ran away from this position. But if we take a look at Zaitsevo, Zaitsevo is very far from the front line. If we take a look at this map and if we consider the situation on this map as like a real situation, that means that right in front of Zaitsevo there are Opytna, Ivangrad, there are fortifications on the west, there are road rocket that connects Adaryanovka and Bakhmut. So to tell the truth, I can't even imagine how the Ukrainians with the 50 soldiers were able to cross all these fortifications and get very close to Zaitsevo. Something tells me that there are a lot of, at least I have a lot of questions with Opytna, Ivangrad, and to tell the truth, by this update of attack in direction of Zaitsevo, I believe maybe that not everything is so clear in Opytna, Ivangrad, and Ivangrad. Maybe the Russians were forced to step back from this position. For now, I don't have real information, so for now, let's wait a little bit to understand what is going to be next. If we are talking about north, about Podgorodnya, the Russians pushes Podgorodnya, the Russian pushes residential area in the east part of Bakhmut, and today the Russians are saying there are very heavy clashes in this industrial zone. The Russians managed to get some square meters in this area, and now these hours they try to develop their offensive operation in this area. Now we are moving to Donetsk front line, and today we have some updates from this area. Some updates from this area as well, and they are very interesting. First of all, let's take a look at Donetsk itself. As you can see, there are not much icons of shelling of Donetsk. So as you can see, the pressure over this town from the Ukrainian side has been reduced. Of course, we can explain the situation by many things. First of all, maybe some Ukrainian partners ask them not to attack Donetsk. It's also an option. Maybe the Ukrainians is out of ammo or shells, or maybe something else took place in this area, and we will discuss this in more details. But before, let's discuss Avdiivka North front line. Today the Russians reported that they managed to develop their bridgehead from Novoselovka Drugaya in direction of Krasnogorovka. This town is located in the north of Avdiivka, and let's say this is some kind of a hat of cauldron that the Russians are planning to establish over Avdiivka. And of course, if the Russians are able to take Krasnogorovka, we can say that forces in Avdiivka, Ukrainian forces, are going to find themselves in a very big troubles. But before that, let's discuss one more time situation between Krasnogorovka and Novoselovka Drugaya. So the Russians reported they got this cross. They got the Ukrainian fortification in this area, and this is a very important area, and I will try to explain to you why this area is very important. Let's take a look at this map, and you're going to see that this is Krasnogorovka. This our Krasnogorovka, and this area is under complete Ukrainian control, and this is Novosilovka Druga. According to the Ukrainian Western sources map, this town is under Ukrainian control, but according to the Russians, as you can see, this town is under Russian control, Velika Novosilovka Druga, sorry. And the Russians got control over this cross. So let's update this map, and now this is, I believe, the real situation in this town, in this area. And as you can see now, the Russians have a strict road in direction of Krasnogorovka. So now the Russians got today they got fortifications and trenches over this cross. They was pretty powerful. They was under real fire control from the Ukrainian side. They had landfill in this area. As you can see from this area, they were able to follow, to control and support Ukrainians, but for some reason they couldn't hold these positions, and now Russians got there, and now the Russians have all possibilities to move along these forests, along these brushes in direction of Krasnogorovka, and believe me, they will do this. It's not an easy job, but I think that they will try to develop their operation in this direction as well. And the reason maybe why the Ukrainians lost this position is the same as in Kupiansk, Liman, as we discussed at the beginning. The Ukrainians lost a lot of artillery systems during the previous 24 hours in this area. If we take a look at this map, we see that the Ukrainians lost their at least two Grad systems in the town by the name of Pervomayska, and one of these town was destroyed in Kamyshovacha. Another 3D-30 howitzers were destroyed. One of these howitzers was located in Marianka. Another one was located in Vadiane, that located near Uglidar, and one of them we discussed was located in Tarskoy and Liman Kupiansk front line. Furthermore, the Ukrainians lost one M777 artillery system. So as you can see, the Russians started very effective and very powerful counter-artillery work on Donetsk front line. They moved a lot of artillery system from their own side, and they started real hunting in this area. So maybe this is the reason why the Ukrainians were forced to reduce the attack of Donetsk, because they're under very heavy hunting. They are hunted by the Russians. The Russians try to spot, and they're not giving them even a chance to deploy their artillery system and to start fire. Furthermore, maybe this is the reason why the Ukrainians lost their position in front of Krasnogorovka, just because they don't have any, they couldn't deploy very fast their artillery support, and that's why they were forced to step back and to lose this position. Furthermore, the Russians reported that during the day they attacked some kind of service center in Kramatorsk, and as a result of that attack, the Ukrainians lost in this service center 2 HIMARS system, 2 artillery Gvozdika system, 5 D-30 howitzers, 3 specialized armored vehicles. So we can say that today was the day under artillery duel flag, and today we can say that this day was these artillery duels was in Russian favor during the day. So this is the situation. And if we're talking about Donetsk region itself, the Ukrainian lost around 100 soldiers and something around 12 armored vehicles. Furthermore, the Russians attack the Ukrainians as well in Kramatorsk, and they attacked their 18th Air Assault Brigade, as I understand, and the losses among this brigade is around 35 soldiers. The same updates are coming from the south, from Uglidar. There are also very powerful, very intensive artillery duels in this area. The Russians attack headquarters, the Russians attack manpower, the concentration of the Ukrainian forces, and so on. And as a result of the previous 24 hours clashes in this area, the Ukraine lost around 40 soldiers and something around 5 armored vehicles. So we understand the benefits of both sides, of both parties. The Russians are very successful and are very effective when they are able to stabilize the front line, and of course they have superiority in artillery systems, and they have superiority in maybe some aircrafts and so on, air carriers that they are able to use to attack the Ukrainians from some distance. They have superiority, and when the Russians are able to stabilize the front line, when they are able not to allow the Ukrainians to be flexible and mobile, when they are able to force the Ukrainians to accumulate their forces, of course, with artillery, they start destroying the Ukrainian and reduce the Ukrainian army heavily. And we know that from the other side, the Ukrainians have a lot of experience, they have a lot of benefits and pluses when they're able to stretch the Russians' front line and to attack them in their flanks, like in Kharkov, in Zaporozhye. But these days, the Ukrainians are not able to do this, and I believe that the April is the only time the Ukrainians will be able to start something as they did in Kharkiv and Zaporozhye, to start some massive offensive operations, counter-offensive operation. But before April, I believe they are not able to do anything. And I'm not saying that Ukrainians will start something in April. Furthermore, the German military experts are saying that the Russians are planning. They decided to move their greatest offensive operation from January and February of December to April, and the next big offensive operation the Russians are planning to start in April. And during the winter period, we are going to see the same thing as we saw today, like heavy artillery duels, where the Russians will try to spot and destroy the Ukrainian system, and like heavy clashes along the front line, and a very slow but progress on the ground, like small school and somewhere in Solidar, or another high building, some building in south of Opotna, and something like this. So very slow progress, and the main goal is to reduce the Ukrainian artillery system and Ukrainian army. And that's it for today. Military Summer channel reminds to condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my page, and have a good day. Bye bye.